Welcome to Board Game Nation. My name is Gary Blevins. Thank you so much for watching. Today we're thrilled to bring you our complete interview with the founder and CEO of Beamdog, Mr. Trent Oster. We talked about the future of Axis & Allies 1942 Online, the dice, the AI, and the possibility of future versions of the game. Plus, he hit us with a Board Game Nation exclusive announcement. Make sure you stick around for that. But first, some background. Trent worked in game development for 15 years at BioWare as a project manager and executive producer before striking out on his own in 2009. He called his friend Cameron Topher, and together they founded Beamdog, a new software and gaming design company in the beautiful city of Edmonton. Together, they pursued the licenses for popular but underdeveloped games, and they hit gold. Over the years, they built a tremendous team of designers and developers and successfully published digital versions of Baldur's Gate 1 and 2, Icewind Dale, Neverwinter Nights, and the legendary RPG Planescape Torment. A truly monumental task, but they weren't done. Having been a lover of Axis & Allies since he was a kid, Trent wanted to develop a quality digital version of the game that would allow players across the globe to discover this amazing game. In 2017, he got to work. He didn't just want to make a knockoff of the game that he loved, he wanted to make sure that the original creators and designers were fairly credited and compensated for their creation. So Trent and his team set out to navigate the bureaucratic maze that is the Avalon Hill, Wizards of the Coast, and Hasbro Consortium in search of a license to create a digital version of Axis & Allies 1942 2nd Edition. It took a while, but they came out on the other side successful. And are we glad they did? In mid-2019, after nearly a year of development, Beamdog partnered with Steam and launched an early access version of Axis & Allies 1942 Online. I loved it, but like any brand new software, it had some bugs and some user interface issues to work out. But overall, the software has been a hit. We've seen the Beamdog team continuously work to patch issues and improve the UI. The most recent update was a full upgrade with a major facelift and significant enhancements that dramatically improved the player experience. We're definitely excited to share with you what they've got in store for us. Let's make it hot. Trent, welcome to Board Game Nation. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk with us. We're excited about everything going on with Beamdog, and we understand that you've got a big announcement. But before we get to your big news, I'm wondering if we could take a look back. Axis & Allies 1942 Online launched with a bang in mid-2019. What parts of that project have you been the most satisfied with, and what do you think were some of the bigger learning points so far?
Well, I think one of the key learnings was that anytime anything hits the internet, it becomes much harder to do. So we definitely had some server stability issues off the start. We definitely had some user interface problems that I guess we'd been playing the game for quite a while and they became fairly intuitive to us, but it wasn't really obvious what was happening to other players. And we really kind of marched it forward with a lot of feedback from the community and really listening and trying to pay attention to what people were stumbling on and what people were really enjoying. I think the biggest upsides for me have been the participation in the tournaments. How good those players really are. Like, we were playing this game internally in the office and we're like, man, we've played thousands of games of Axis & Allies. We're going to be pretty good. Within a couple of weeks, the people in the community were already getting way better than we were. And it was kind of like, oh, wow, these people are really good at what they do. They get this game and they get it pretty cold. I think the other key learning was that random number generators are never your friend.
Yeah, I will say that probably has been the biggest complaint coming from the community. That plus a few UI issues, especially around transports and stuff like that. But we'll talk more about the random number generator in a minute. My 20 years of casino experience has probably given me a little insight, but we'll double back to that soon. Next, I want to say congrats on the huge update that just rolled out. This was no small patch. This was a full facelift and UI upgrade. I wonder if you can walk us through what people should be looking for with this upgrade.
Yeah, I think the biggest improvement was we went through and redid a lot of the UX. We really improved, especially the combat board. So the combat board rolls a lot faster, it plays better, it just allows you to move through the game faster. We also really did a lot of work around transports and trying to make transports more intuitive. So when you load up units onto a transport, it's going to automatically kind of predict your next move and you can place those units quickly where you want to. Whereas previously you had to load the units up, then you had to grab the transport again and decide where you wanted to put it. There's also some really big features on the dice side. Specifically, we added biased dice. So biased dice, it really reduces the likelihood of 1s and 6s. It kind of favors that sweet spot. 2s go down a bit, 3s go down a bit, but 3s and 4s are kind of your most common. So it's really kind of taking that dice curve and squashing it into a more almost normalized field. The other one is low luck dice. So low luck dice is pretty much what it sounds like. It essentially takes all the dice, adds it up, divides it by 6. That many hits happen, and then any additional hits it actually rolls against. So it slows the game down a bit. It makes it much more statistical. You much more kind of straightforward to play. Luck still plays a role, but less of a role. And I got to be honest, low luck's probably my favorite we're playing right now.
Okay, so I guess I'm curious, when you say it slows down a little bit, does that mean it takes more processing power for the computer to figure out, or does it take longer for the human to make the move? Is it a computer slowdown or a human slowdown?
Typically, yeah. It's actually just a gameplay slowdown because it takes longer to play out the combat because it takes more rounds because you're not getting these percentile hits. You're getting guaranteed hits, and then you're only rolling on the last potential hit. So you're hitting less, so the game, the combat takes a little longer to play through.
Okay, that makes sense. So you mean there's more rounds of combat?
Correct.
Okay, yeah, that makes more sense. There's not a difference in the processing power on the part of the computer or of the human, that there's more rounds of play or combat as a result of having fewer anomalies, fewer instances of 5 1s rolling or 4 6s.
Exactly.
Am I saying that right?
That's correct.
Let's take a quick step back. There's a lot of fantastic board games out there that could be, well, and are, great digital experiences. What made you choose Axis and Allies, and what made it the right game to bring forward now?
Well, I got to be honest, Axis and Allies was kind of a vanity project for me. Out of all the board games I played as a kid, Axis and Allies was one of the ones I've most fondly remembered and had the most fun playing. And I felt when I talked to my friends group, it was a similar perception. It's like, yeah, that was a great game. I love playing it. It just doesn't fit my life anymore. And I kind of thought about it. It's like, well, what if we could make it fit into your life better? Would you be interested in playing? And across my friend group, the feedback was, of course, I'd love to play Axis and Allies again. It's just I live in a different city than you, or there's no way I can get a whole evening away from wife, children, job in order to hook up, to meet up and be able to play this game.
Well, I have to say, I like that you're ambitious enough to think that you can get through a game in an evening. I block out all day Saturday to play with my friends, but I think you're absolutely right. I'm curious, what made you pick 1942 Second Edition? I mean, there's some 15 versions of the game out right now. What made you land on 42.2?
Well, it was part of our relationship with Wizards of the Coast. There was a lot of discussion around what the current versions of the game were and really what the feeling was in terms of which version would make the most sense. Now, personally, I got almost all of my gameplay experience with Axis and Allies with the old classic blue box. And I loved that version of it. It's got some balance issues off the start. It's a little rough, but that is the version that I remember and that I loved. And when we looked at the current versions, 1942 Second Edition was the closest kind of in similar feel and look. It felt like it was kind of that Goldilocks zone, where it wasn't as simple as 1940 and it wasn't as complicated as 50th Anniversary or that Pacific War European theater kind of mega set.
I just want to clarify, you mentioned the blue box. Did you mean the classic from 1984 or the revised from 2004, which also came in a blue box?
The 84 original.
Oh, the original. Okay,
Yeah.
You're going way back. I like it. I think that's the game most of us learned on and fell in love with, and you're absolutely right. There are some balance issues, which is, I guess, kind of why bidding became so popular.
Yep.
I think that 1942 Second Edition was the right choice to get started. Now, I know that there's a number of our subscribers and members of the Axis and Allies community at large that would love to see an anniversary edition or a 1914, which is really growing in popularity, by the way, but it's really hard to find a copy of the tabletop version right now. People would also love to see a version that I'm sure is the global edition. I wonder if there's any conversations happening anywhere in the halls or water coolers at Beamdog?
Those conversations are always happening in the halls of Beamdog. Basically, we look forward to the success of the game, and with the success of the game, we'll continue to invest and continue to look at how we can expand out the experience. I mean, I love the idea that it's an official Axis and Allies product. We have our friends at Wizards of the Coast that we can talk to about it, about the game and about the direction they're going and opportunities to tie in, and that just that legitimacy of it's actually approved, and when we sell the game, we're supporting the creators of the original board game. And I just love that whole chain.
Yeah, I'm definitely a big fan of using licensed products whenever possible. You hinted at something there. I wonder if I can ask. News coming out of Hasbro about the future of the Axis and Allies franchise recently has been, well, non-existent. I'm curious if you've got any insights that you can share with us.
Actually, I don't have a lot of insight into it. We've been informed that Hasbro is taking over kind of the Avalon Hill side, and I believe they're still trying to hire some people in to head that. So I think that's, if there's any reason there's no news coming out, it's because they're searching for the best person to do this. And I have a lot of faith in them, and I think they see a lot of value in Avalon Hill, and they look forward to carrying it forward.
Well, I hope so. I know that there's a lot of trepidation in the community about what Hasbro plans to do with the franchise. I hope they know they've got a really passionate fan base that's watching closely and is really excited for more about this game. When I got a chance to talk with the creator of Axis and Allies, the amazing Larry Harris, which was a great thrill, I asked him specifically about the Beamdog product, and he said he was really impressed with what your team has done. I asked him how they compared, and he said something that kind of shocked me. He said that he wasn't sure which was better, your online version or the tabletop version that he designed. When he said that, it kind of blew me away. That's high praise, my friend.
He's way too kind, way too kind.
Right? I mean, if I were you, I would have that etched on my wall. I'll say the big question I was trying to get at with Larry was, how does the game change when it goes from face-to-face to an online environment? His point was that they don't compete, that they complement each other. If you can play online, great. If you can play in person, great. But I think you might be in a unique position to answer that same question.
In person, I like to participate in the social side a lot. And especially with a certain group of friends, I'll be pretty chatty about it. And we'll goof off when we roll, and we'll taunt each other, and we'll bother each other, and we'll have a lot of back and forth and engagement around that. And when rolls swing wildly in one way in somebody's favor, that sparks a lot of heated discussion, which is always a lot of fun. With the online version, you don't get that same level of intensity. You can if you're on a Discord chat and you're playing the game, but in my experience, typically the online game plays a little slower, a little more thoughtful. One of the things I find is if I've got too many games going at a time, I'll forget which strategy I'm pursuing. So I'll actually write myself notes in the game. So I'll put map notes down, and I'll be like, defend this area because your strategy is to attack Russia next turn. So then when I come back to it, I'm like, oh, this is that game. Okay, I got it. And it's a lot of fun, and especially being able to play against different friend groups in different cities. Like, I've got friends who are in California. I've got friends who are in different provinces of Canada. I've got friends who are overseas in Germany. And it's wonderful that I can set up games with them, and they can jump in and play on their time. I can play on my time zone, and we can just keep moving the game forward. And to me, that's a wonderful experience that there's no way I could play the actual board game version with that friend in Germany, especially. And being able to connect with them through the game just feels so empowering.
I think you're right that the most exciting feature of the online options is the ability to play with people around the world. But I would also say that, and maybe this was an unintended consequence, but because we can play so many more games so much more quickly than we could ever have played them on a table, the strategies are developing much faster than before. Because we're able to play out the same strategy 6 different ways to see what works, like, the level of play is going up really, really quickly. I wonder if you've got any thoughts on that.
I have the exact same opinion. When I play the game, I typically use low luck dice to just kind of remove some of that variability so I can try different strategic ideas and roll out different strategies. And the great thing, you can start a strategy against the AI, just single player, see how it's panning out, then take it to the next level, play it against live players, see how it's panning out, and then actually take it even further, remove the low luck dice from the equation, and actually try the normal dice version against live skilled players and see how that strategy pulls out. So I use it kind of like those 3 tiers of how I develop my strategy, and it's still not enough to save me from the online players that are out there.
There are some players out there that are really, really good at this game. There's no doubt about that. Lots of feedback about the AI. Now, we did a video here that showed that I was able to win as the Axis against the AI in 2 turns. Now, I did get lucky at one point, but while the AI is really good at standing up against what are typically basic or beginner strategies, when it's faced with intermediate or advanced strategies, it has a tendency to stick to its script. I'm curious what the plans are for the AI. But I should also say that I've heard feedback from folks that said that the AI was too hard. Can you tell us what your thoughts are for the Beamdog AI moving forward?
Yeah, AI is always a hard line to walk because you want it to be challenging but not devastating. And at the same time, I don't think we ever set out for the AI to challenge really talented players. I think the only thing that can challenge talented players is other talented players. And really, I view the AI as exactly that. It's kind of a, hey, this is my first level to develop strategy and test it against. And I think it's a good balance right now for a new player. I set a goal, which is if you roll into this game and you don't know much about it and you're starting to learn it, you probably shouldn't be able to beat the AI. It should be better than you. But around your third or fourth game, when you start to understand all the mechanics and how the game works together, you should have a pretty good fair fight. And by 5 to 10 games, you should be consistently be able to beat the AI. And really, I think that's the zone we've kind of fallen into. Occasionally, the AI will surprise you. It'll do something that's a little more aggressive than you were expecting. And sometimes it'll hold off in a scenario where you're like, why are you not attacking me right now? And the answer is because the AI is occasionally stupid. And that's okay, I think. From a balance standpoint, I don't want a world-crushing AI. So I'm pretty happy with the balance that came in. I don't think we'll make it much easier. I think we'll occasionally continue to tweak it and add a little more thought to it, a little more strategy to it.
I heard a suggestion that I thought was really interesting about the AI. I had a subscriber that commented that he would be willing to pay for different in-game AI characters with different strategic packages. Like a German general that will always use a kill UK first strategy, or like an allied general that always kills Japan first. I think that'd be really interesting. I wonder, what is the Beamdog thinking around AI development and that type of in-game purchase?
Yeah, so AI is a fun thing because there's just so much evolution in it at any given time. Our approach is pretty script-based, but it's able to kind of make decision points and vary its strategy based on kind of key outcomes. So if early in the game you're not doing much in the Pacific, it'll start pushing hard on Europe as the allies. Whereas if you're pushing hard in the Pacific, the US will start lending more support into the Pacific and really kind of trying to balance the world out. So the US is actually probably one of the more adaptive AIs there. And you can still see a similar thing with Russia, where if you leave Russia alone for too long as the axis, they come back pretty powerful against you. So it's one of those things where that UK first strategy is a hard one to pull off because Russia gets aggressive fairly quickly. We did some experimentation with the university and with some learning AIs. And unfortunately, we never really got it to a point where we could let it loose and really beast mode out to see what would happen. We were always kind of terrified of there'd be some secret Brazil strategy where it just doesn't make sense in the real world, but this is just the dominant strategy for the computer to use. And we've always been terrified of that. So when the opportunities come up, they usually have a lot of zeros behind the bill. So it hasn't happened yet, but it's definitely one of those things. And I think on the idea of selling AI, we're an indie studio and we really kind of believe in value, and we really want the fans to get good value with anything that we sell. So we don't want to get into this kind of crazy monetization wheel. We want to get in this scenario where we have a customer base that really appreciates the product, and when we deliver something to them, it's got good value. Like when we deliver a new rules package, it's a full rules package, a new map, there's new units, there's a lot of new stuff in there, and it's worthwhile. Because I really think you're spending your hard-earned money to support us. We want to make sure you're getting your value for it.
I think people have this notion that Beamdog is this giant corporation that has a field of programmers working on Access and Allies Online, and they should be able to pump out big changes and fix problems with no time flat. And as I got ready for our conversation today, I learned that Beamdog, and I'm going to need my list here, is also responsible for supporting and creating all the online content for Baldur's Gate 1 and 2, Icewind Dale, Neverwinter Nights, and a game that I had forgotten about that I used to love called Planescape Torment, plus a number of expansions for each of these games, some of which are supported in up to 15 languages. Now, I don't have any doubt that the Access and Allies project is important to you and the rest of your team, but I wonder if you can give us a better idea of the size of the team working on Access and Allies at Beamdog.
Yeah, so the core Access and Allies team is actually 13 people, and that includes production people, QA, developers, artists, and user interface designers and game designers. So 13 is not a lot of people, and they hit pretty hard. Kevin Beckstead has done amazing work leading the technology charge on that front. And we just made big leaps forward in that. We've got Robert Felizardo, who's just been doing great work on the UX and just moving things forward. And our QA team testing it, making sure that every version we push live is stable, solid, and it's not going to blow up people's games. People aren't going to lose their standings. We're really cautious before we push builds live. So we've really got this kind of whole process built now. And it's a hard push with a team I call that team small. I mean, I've worked in AAA games and I've worked with teams up to 100 people. So a 13-person team for me seems small and manageable and just about right-sized. It's where game making is still a craft, where you still get to see the effect of your hands on the work. Whereas when you get into a 100-person game, you become the guy who does the eye shader, and you can only notice, oh, I'm the eyeball guy. Did you notice the eyeballs in that game? Because that's my eyeballs. I did all that. And it's like, guy did amazing work. Eyeballs look great, but nobody really notices that. And from a fulfillment standpoint, as a game developer, and from an agency standpoint, you just don't get the same feeling of ownership. Whereas with our team, everyone on that team feels ownership on Access and Allies Online. Like when a new patch comes out, people know who did what work on it, and they call each other out on it when a build goes up. It's like, hey, I was playing this and that was great. Kevin did that, or Robert did that, or Leo did that. And when production deadlines come around, I'm talking with Dan, the producer, about it. I was like, Dan, where are we at? And he's right in there. So it's kind of that really beautiful mix of almost artisanal game development that I really love. It's that small, hands-on, people who really give a damn about what they're working on.
I think that's great, and I think it's something that we don't see enough of nowadays. And I think the work that your team has done so far has been really good. Now, I didn't get a chance to play the new upgrade until it went fully live, but I thought it was great. Like, it solved some really big issues, but also a lot of little small issues. And I did have a couple minor bugs, but we almost immediately saw patches that took care of those. And I'm excited about what you guys have already done and where you're going next. So, in case nobody else has said it, well, thank you.
But thanks. I really enjoy hearing that, and the team loves that kind of feedback as well. Like when we look at the game and we build a patch and we get a version ready to go, especially a major update like that, like we've got our QA team that's embedded and they're testing as much as they can, but the QA team is 3 people. So 3 people by 8 hours a day, say we test for 3 weeks. In the first hour the game's live, it's already surpassed the entire QA volume we spent on it. So no matter how hard we look, we're not going to find everything. And when the fans find it, the team is listening, they're paying attention, they hear about a bug. The second news of a bug hits this office, people are talking about how to hotfix it and how quickly we can get it turned around and what's the safest and best process to roll that out. We really value the fans and we want them to have a great experience. And when there's a bug, well, honestly, the team takes it really personal. It's like, man, how do we miss that? And the answer sometimes is combinatorial hell. There's so many combinations of potential things happening, we just can't catch them all. And sometimes things slip through, but I'm pretty happy with the way we catch almost all bugs that we do internal, people never see. So we're crunching hundreds of bugs every week that the fans will never see. And to me, it's a great process. And when we do see a bug in the public, we chase it down, we quickly hotfix it, stamp it out. And if it's a larger issue that we just never thought of, like from a gameplay flow or something, it's something we'll work out and we'll listen to community feedback on. And really, the people who play the game at this point know the game flow and they know what they like and they know what they don't like. Almost better than we do. We have our intent and our desire of this game, which is really want to preserve the experience of the board game, but at the same time, open it up so more people can enjoy it, and really searching out the best way to do that from an interface, from a game logic, and from a flow standpoint.
Folks that want to get online and play Axis and Allies, or to put it more accurately, Axis and Allies style games, have a few choices. Can you talk about why players should choose the Beamdog offering over the other options?
So I think the other products out there offer a good variety. They offer a lot of options. I think the main reason to take a look at Axis and Allies 1942 online is we spent a ton of work working on that interface and smoothing it out and making this the best flowing gameplay we can imagine. The gameplay is smooth, it plays well, and it follows the rules of the game very, very closely. The second kind of major point, it's an officially licensed product. I kind of talked about this a little earlier, that it's the whole value chain. You're supporting us as the developers of the game and our efforts to support the game going forward. You're also supporting the original creators. You're supporting the board game side of the business. You're really showing that there's a great future and there's a great audience for Axis and Allies. And to me, it's all about the brand and the license. And it's the reason that I went after Axis and Allies license off the start. I love the game, I love the brand, and I want to do what I can to support it.
Awesome. Okay, let's talk about the dice. It seems like the number one complaint was the kind of outlier dice outcomes. Now, first, I should say that this is going to be an unpopular opinion in some corners of the community, but I spent more than 20 years working in and around the casino industry, and in that time, I learned over and over and over again that there's nothing more attention-grabbing than outliers. Big wins, bad beats, really any amazing improbabilities they're always going to grab everyone's attention. But no one ever notices when things happen to go the way they were supposed to. They don't go onto the online forums and say, all the dice followed the expected math throughout my entire game. Nobody does that. But when they do have anomalous outcomes, they jump right out there. And when they do, it always draws everyone's attention. Now, I think that attention has a tendency to distract from the really great work that's actually being done. But still, these are the feelings of the community and they need to be addressed. So I wonder if you can talk to us about the evolution of the random number generators that Beamdog has used in the past and what options are going to be available to the players in that area.
I think first off, random numbers are random. And by their very nature, that's kind of what makes the game fun. Now, our random number generator implementation, we've gone through a number of different ideas and concepts on how to do it. But fundamentally, we roll a big range of numbers and then we crush it down into a D6 representation. This allows us to have a bigger variety of potential rolls, and we've done the statistical analysis on it. The likelihood of a 1 is the exact same as the likelihood of a 6, which is exact same as the likelihood of a 3. It's statistically flat, the graph. So every time we've gone through and we've revalidated the rolls, it always comes back as this statistical average that every dice roll is equally likely. And we found that in online games, it still holds true. They all average out to the same values. It all comes back to a mean roll. So along those lines, we developed the concept of, well, what if we took and built like a version of the dice that was a little more balanced or a little more biased? We call it stabilized. So stabilized dice fundamentally they generate that same range, and then they crush it down. They reduce the likelihood of a 1, they reduce the likelihood of a 6, slightly reduce the likelihood of a 2, and slightly reduce the likelihood of a 5. So you kind of get that sweet spot where you expect. It's almost like taking 3 dice, rolling them, and then averaging them together. It's going to bias towards the middle by kind of reducing the likelihood of that outliers hitting. So that's a good way to reduce kind of the randomness, but it doesn't get rid of it. And then the third option is low luck dice. So low luck dice basically says, okay, if I add up the attacks of everything I've got here, I've got a number. Say it's 20. Okay, 20 divided by 6. Okay, 18 left over is 2. So I've got 3 hits because I take 18 divided by 6. Then I've got 2 left over. I'll roll 1 dice against the 2. If it's a 1 or a 2, it's a hit. If it's any higher, it's a miss. So it really allows us to kind of crush it down and make the gameplay a lot more kind of strategic and predictable going forward. So low luck really kind of crushes that random statistics as far down as we can without discarding kind of the nature of the game. So the unbridled raw dice, that's your Wild West. There's going to be fun. There's swings. Sometimes you'll roll great. Sometimes you'll roll horrible. And for some reason, it always gets me when I'm doing bomber raids. The dice hate my bombers. They just do. You're not alone. My bombers, almost all of my bombers get shot down at some point. And I made the damn game. And I've gone into the office and I'd be like, you show me right now how this is statistically possible because all of my bombers got shot down. And the programmer there would be like, okay, let's look through the game. Let's analyze everything out. Here's the rolls that happened. You just got unlucky. And I was like, damn, my bombers, always my bombers. So we had a lot of fun playing the game back and forth, and we've gone through and we've looked at that number generator many times from different angles. We came up with biased dice to kind of crush that down, and ultimately load up dice as kind of that final option to really crunch that into a zone. But I think what we've really seen is the expert players in their strategy account for the wild swings of the dice. They understand the fickle nature of luck and how it can interfere with the best laid plans. And there's plan A and there's plan B and plan C and plan D. And if you get down to plan D, it means that luck is definitely not going your way. Whereas I think less experienced players, they kind of have that plan in their mind. It's the singular thing that has to happen. And when it doesn't, they get flustered by that. And as a result, those negative dice swings just feel that much more painful.
I think you're absolutely right. And just like in actual war, luck is always a factor. The odds of losing 3 bombers during a strategic bombing raid is 212 to 1, which is pretty low, but it's not zero. There's always a chance. And that chance is one of the things that makes this game fun. If I want to play a game with full information and no luck, I'll go play chess. Now, I love chess, but it's a different game, right?
Yep. We always went up crafting stories around like the heroic Russian defender, that single infantry unit that just keeps hitting. Everybody's attacking him and he's chewing down the Germans. You're just laughing about it because there's like one solo infantryman and he takes down like 4 tanks and an infantry. And I made a name for him. I called him Sergei, and then I'm bugging everybody about it. Joe, you don't want to attack me, man. Sergei will take you down.
See, now there's something that's interesting to me. You see the same thing happens when you play in the tabletop version. Now, I think that everyone seems to forget that. Now, I've got a buddy that I love playing with live, like on tabletops. We were in a game, and we were the Allies, and he was playing the U.S., and he attacked the Japanese Navy with what we thought was going to be overwhelming force. But he rolled, and he couldn't hit a thing. And the guy playing Japan had the roll of his life. The U.S. lost there's like 140 IPCs worth of material, and I think Japan lost like 8 or something ridiculous. And for the rest of the game, we wouldn't let him shoot. We made him call his wife and have her shoot for him. He wasn't allowed to play. But people seem to forget all that when they get into the online world.
I think a big part of that comes down to agency and blame. When you throw the dice, they came from your hand. There's no one else to blame. When the computer rolls the dice behind the scenes, you didn't actually do the act of rolling the dice. Somewhere in a computer, somewhere on the internet, there was a random number was generated. And I think it's just the fact that it's removed that little bit from you that makes it feel wrong to you. If I could give you a dice peripheral that you could roll at your desk and witness the numbers that you rolled and feed that into the game, I would love that, because instantly you would stop blaming the random number generator.
Well, there are dice now that will connect to Wi-Fi. Now that would be interesting. I wonder, well, that might be worth a phone call.
Yeah.
Anyway, so yeah, I think we've all been there. And
whatever mean things anybody wants to say to the dev team, I've already said it. I've already said it 100-fold.
Right. Save the comments.
I have jumped up from my desk and stormed across the office and just, what kind of bullshit is this?
Well, I'm glad to know that we're not alone.
I have been there myself.
I've been hearing from members of the community that there's an appetite for a sanctioned tournament. Now, of course, Greg Smorey has been running great face-to-face tournaments at Gen Con for like 25 years or something crazy, a long time. And there's been a couple of smaller, like grassroots-sized tournaments that are happening in some of the Discord groups. But I'm wondering if Beamdog is looking at running any kind of like larger-scale sanctioned tournaments.
I think right now we're really focused on, we've got that build up. We're still in early access, so we're really focused on kind of leaving early access And then we're looking at the future of the game and what that entails. We've got the gameplay happening on seasons where we have the season tournaments. But the tournament scene is one of those things that we're really interested in. We think there's a lot of potential there, a lot of possibility. It really comes down to what's the best way for us to execute on that brings the community in, has them heavily involved, and lets them help us hit it in the right note. Because we can come up with our ideas on how we should do something, but ultimately, I want to know how fans want to play the game in a tournament setting. And if we can build a tournament setup where we can quickly get a tournament stood up, people can jump in, play through, have it go through the rounds and eventually get down to a winner, we're all for that. It's just a question of 13 people on the team, probably 6 of those actually developers. So we just got to point the 6 in the right direction and give them the time to do it.
Sure. Yeah. Building out the format in the right way is going to be really important. Of course, Greg has the advantage of having a captive audience, like they're all sitting at the table,
exactly.
Right? I understand you've got some big news to share with the community about Axis and Allies 1942 Online. What can you tell us?
So one of the big things that really excited me about Axis and Allies 1942 Online was the idea of bringing it and making the game really accessible. Now, bring it to Steam and letting you play on your desktop, it was a great process. Through early access, we were able to tune the game up, polish it, and get it to a place where we're really happy with the results and where things are at. But now we're going to release on the iPad. So we've got Axis and Allies 1942 coming out, playable on iPad. And the great thing is you can share your account across devices. So I can start a game on my iPad, I can play it on my PC, I can finish it on my iPad. And really the goal was to allow you to kind of take the game with you and play it on your schedule and play it where you want to play it. And having played a number of games now on the tablet, it is a good experience. I'm really happy with where it ended up and how a lot of the optimizations we've made that people are seeing now in the Steam version were specifically around how to make it really work slick on the tablets. And I think there's a great future for being able to just jump in, play your game on a tablet, and challenge your friends wherever they are in the world.
Wow, that is big news. That's very cool. As someone who travels quite a bit, this is going to be really handy. I love the idea of being able to continue a game that I started on my desk while sitting at an airport or at a coffee shop. Can I also play the solo version, maybe on a plane without an internet connection?
You can.
So even on a plane, I could use my iPad to test strategies against the AI or play against myself.
You can.
That's pretty cool. There's a ton of different iPads out there. Can you tell us which iPads this is going to work with?
Anything newer than what we consider 6th generation. So I think that's like iPad Air 2 kind of timeline. Basically, if you bought it in the last couple of years, it's going to work.
Sweet. So I paid my $20 on Steam. When I head over to the App Store, am I going to need to pay again?
You're going to have to pay on the App Store. Unfortunately, they're 2 different ecosystems, and we have to pay through 2 separate channels. Apple runs one, Steam runs the other. There's not much we can do about that. There's not a lot of flexibility there. But my hope is that for the added mobility, it makes a lot of sense.
Do you know how much it's going to cost for the iPad version on the App Store?
We're going to bring it in at $10 on the App Store.
Well, I've definitely spent more than $10 on stuff on the App Store that wasn't nearly as cool as this, so I think it's probably pretty reasonable to charge $10. I mean, it'll have the solo and the online play, and it'll be able to connect back to the same server, which gives us the ability to...
Yep, you can basically set up your account, and as long as you're logging in with the same account, you're playing the same games. And you can look at them from the two different setups.
Well, that's fantastic. I'm curious, any plans to put anything in the Google Play Store for the Android or Chromebook users?
Yeah, we're not going to leave those guys hanging. There are definite plans in the work.
I wonder if you can talk to us a little bit about how the move to making this program available on the iPad furthers your overall goals for the game and for the software.
It's been great working on the game, and I think being able to bring it to the iPad is really starting to finally close in on my vision of taking this board game that we all love and being able to take it outside of its box and let it be played in new formats, in new ways, with new people who have never played the game before. And I really just, to me, we're finally hitting what I saw 4 years ago when we started this whole venture was, let's make this game, let's let the people enjoy it wherever they are. Let's just knock down barriers. You no longer need to pile everybody in the same physical place. Okay, you don't need a whole evening to play it. Okay, now you can play it when you're mobile. You can play it on your desktop. So we're just removing those barriers, making the game easier to play and easier to get into. And to me, that's a really exciting opportunity, and I think that's where it's really going to start to take off.
So what do you see as the 2, 3, 5-year plan for Axis and Allies 1942 Online?
Well, I mean, with success comes investment, right? Like, at the end of the day, we're a merry little band of 13 working on Axis and Allies, but everybody's got to eat, so it has to make revenue. And with success comes expansion, comes box sets. I really personally want to do the blue box set. I want to add in the technology. I want heavy bombers and super subs and jet fighters, even though they're kind of odd. I mean, sometimes they're like that last ditch gamble that you can kind of do. It's like, I'm going for heavy bombers. I'm US. We're going. And it's entertaining. It's like an orthogonal gameplay element. So it's fun in that way. After that, we're going to look at the other rule sets. I mean, a lot of interest has been expressed in the global set, the two packaged together. A lot of interest in 50th anniversary. And like you mentioned, 1914 is kind of an up-and-comer. I think there's a ton of opportunity here. We've built the technology, we've proved it out, and each of those kind of rule sets is just some additional work on top, some new features. With 50th anniversary, we've got to add a 6th nation. With the global set, we've got to add even more nations to flesh it out. But they're not insurmountable challenges. It's what we do. We sit down, look at the rules books. We start putting things together. And sometimes we take a couple punches in the face because what sounds simple on the surface quite often isn't simple when you get down into the guts of it. But ultimately, see it through. And if I were to see my ultimate vision in 5 years, it would be Axis and Allies 1942 Online is this expansive platform that allows you to play multiple box sets, tournament form, all sorts of options on how you want to play. House rules, all sorts of things. I mean, there's a ton of potential here. We just have to see it through.
Well, I'm here for it. I'm excited about it. I think that's going to be great. I can't wait to see how all this develops. Trent, thank you so much for taking the time to talk with us today. We're super excited about your announcement and everything you've got coming up for Beamdog and for Axis and Allies 1942 Online. Thank you so much for your time.
Thanks for having me. I mean, I always love talking about the game and our team. I'm just so proud of what they've been able to develop and deliver. And I'm so happy to see it come out on the iPad so that new audiences can enjoy it. And I'm happy as well because there's actually people I could play against and probably win once we get new players in. Because right now it's not so good on my front.
So that's your real motivation. Oh, you're just looking for fresh meat in the game.
I'm looking for people who aren't going to beat me horribly off the start. That's like a secondary.
Well, I wish you luck. I wish you luck. It was great talking with you. Thanks again for the time.
Thanks. It's been a great interview.
Well, there you have it, friends. Another Board Game Nation exclusive. Axis and Allies 1942 Online by Beamdog is going to be available for the iPad starting August 2021. Make sure you check it out. It also sounds like the Android version isn't far behind. Plus, we learned that there are plans in the works for other versions and styles of play. All really, really exciting news. A big thank you to Trent Oster for taking the time to talk with us and the entire Beamdog team for working with us to bring you this exclusive interview. Time to hear from you. What questions do you wish that I would have asked? What do you think of what Beamdog has in the pipeline? Let us know in the comments below. If you'd like to see our interview with the original creator of Axis and Allies, Larry Harris, click here. If you need more about the rules and the strategy, right this way. For our latest bit of mayhem, here you go. And if you're ready to join Board Game Nation, click here to subscribe. My name is Gary Blevins. This is Board Game Nation. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you next time.